This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Mac and Jack Show. This is Saturday, the debate show, and I am here with your hosts, Mac and Jack, who are on the bottom side today, and also Dr. Paul Seminger, award-winning author and best-selling book with his best-selling about the Yankees. And, of course, myself, the Philly sports guy. Good morning, guys.
Hey, good morning, fellas.
Good morning, Pat. Good morning, everyone.
How's everybody doing today?
It's a beautiful day.
I'm used to being on the lower left-hand side. You know
what? I realized that after I went ahead and started. Let me put this the way it's supposed to be.
No, okay. I mean, it's like bases. I'm on like third base or something now.
Now you're on first base.
Oh no, now I'm on first base.
Well, yeah, you're on first base. I'm a third. I'm in scoring position.
Yes.
It's almost like the Brady Bunch.
The way that looks, I don't know. I think that would be the opposite way, that you're on first, I'm on second, he's on third, and Mac is home.
I'm at Keith Hernandez's position, so I'm happy.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Not only that, and we had 3 viewers gone. You mentioned Keith Hernandez, and they just disappeared. That joke, it's the joke that just keeps on giving.
It is.
So, you know what? I was looking at the debate questions, and I wanted to jump into one very quickly because I wanted to get this done and out of the way because it really does have a little bit of a political undertone. And I was watching this on ESPN yesterday, and I think that it's something that I'd like to talk about. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say first. The question is, realistically, can we expect Russia to do a prisoner swap involving Brittany Griner? And I have a very unique opinion about this that may not be very popular, but I want to hear what you guys got to say first.
I'll just start off. Realistically, no. It's not what we want. It's not what we think should take place. It's not about justice. It's about leverage. The United States is directly, let's say, helping an enemy of Russia who's at war with Russia right now. Ukraine and Russia are at war, and Ukraine's an ally of the United States. We're sending them equipment, ammunition, giving them advice. And Russia's not going to want to negotiate anything with the United States unless the United States was going to give back something totally unrealistic, like lift certain sanctions. The United States isn't going to lift, with their allies, some sanctions on Russia for return of Brittany Griner. I mean, that would be ludicrous to even think that could happen. And the Russian government, Putin, they understand by holding Brittany Griner, it's going to cause unrest in the United States over here amongst certain factions. Because unfortunately, not everyone could see what the situation is. And people within the United States might blame our government over here. Well, we're not doing enough. Like LeBron James, for example. He made a comment, why would Brittany Griner even want to return to this country, because we're not pushing hard enough to get her to come back, which was, a ludicrous remark. It really was. And LeBron's people had him backtrack on the remark immediately because they were scared he'd lose sponsors. So then LeBron James allegedly, and I don't believe this came from him, said, no, I wasn't putting down our beautiful country. LeBron James never referred to this country as being beautiful. And LeBron James has done some wonderful charitable things and some very good things, it has to be pointed out, that could be over and above as well. But in this case, and then we hear everyone get this free Britney thing. Putin's not going to want to let her go under nearly any circumstance, not while the United States is on such hostile terms with Russia. It's just not realistically going to happen. And the more we start pushing for this and putting pressure on our own government, the worse it becomes. I mean, the worse it becomes, because then Putin knows he has something over us. He has a bargaining chip. That's all Brittany Griner is. It's a major bargaining chip. And it's something to cause division within the United States. There is absolutely no way Russia's doing any prisoner swap. And just the idea that we think that they might actually do it at this point in time, is unrealistic. When the war in Ukraine eventually ends, and we all hope it happens soon, then that comes in play. Then it becomes realistic that something can be worked out.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Jack there. I mean, why would they give up Griner when they don't have to? I mean, they really don't. So if you're Russia, they're in a great position right now to get what they want, to get us to try to stop us from supporting what is the country again? Oh my God,
Ukraine.
Yeah. So why would they give her up? I don't think they will, and it's too bad. It really is.
All right, so I'll jump in. The you know me, I follow baseball primarily, so I'm ancillary to the topic as a big picture thing. But my question would be: is she the only American being held in Russia? If she is, that's one thing. But
she's tied into a prisoner who was accused of spying, Paul Whelan, who was given a 16-year sentence. So the government is handling their cases together, not just Brittany Griner alone. Griner and Whelan, and even Griner's family attached her to the Whelan family because they understand. But all the noise that's happening on the sports stations, the athletes, is in relation to Brittany Griner, but they also realize that Paul Whelan has to be on her coattails.
Right. So that's my bigger point. Is it's not just one person. It's a number of people that I don't think in a situation like that you give preference just to somebody because they're an athlete. That's really what I'm driving at. If there's other people that are being held prisoner for whatever reason, maybe for similar reasons. Again, I didn't follow it and I haven't followed it, but I don't think you should give the preference to someone just because they're an athlete to say that athlete should not be a prisoner, but somebody else who might be held should be. So that's where I'm coming from. But I haven't done a whole lot of research on this one.
All right. Now
I want to hear Pags' take.
So I have, because I've done some travel, and when I went to Hungary and to Budapest with the U.S. arm wrestling team, they told me, don't bring stuff that could possibly get you arrested because jail over there is not jail over here. You're not going to get a fair shake. You're not going to get things. Things are not like here. I got to imagine they had that conversation with her. They probably had that conversation with every single one of those players, probably in a group. And she chose to bring that pen. All it was just a vape pen that had marijuana in it. So it's, the ridiculousness of going over there and getting caught, for the fact that she got 16 years because of a little bit of pot. Okay. It's not our country. It's not our way. Not the way that they do things. So obviously they used that as a pawn. They used her as a pawn to be able to take her. And like I said, the other guy, nobody even heard of the other guy until she got here. Now, the truth of the matter is that they're willing to do a trade, but they want real political prisoners for these two guys. And they want it's like an 8-for-2 trade. Think about it as if, the Vikings are trading for, what's his face? And the Dallas Cowboys are getting all those picks. There you go. And that's kind of what's occurring here. She, in her own volition, brought that stuff with her. You could, I didn't realize it was in my bag. That's bull. That's bull. So the fact that they're using this now as political posturing is ridiculous to me. It's ridiculous. She knew what she was doing. And let me tell you, that I got to imagine that of all the Russian jails that she's in a cushy one because she looks pretty good. She looks like she's been eating. She looks like that she is healthy. And I guess that's pretty important because that's what they got to do to be able to even keep this in the mix. But the fact that this is even a thing, hey, you know what? It's their own fault. If I went over there to Russia and I brought a little marijuana pen and I got arrested, do you think that the U.S. government would come after me? Hey, the Philly sports guy got arrested. He had a little bit of, an empty marijuana cartridge. It could have been empty. Wouldn't matter because it was the principle. Don't do it. Don't bring it there. And she brought it there. And that's what broke the law. That was the issue. And I don't care how much it was or whatever. She knew she did wrong and did it anyways. Maybe you shouldn't have gone there if that's the case. If you need pot,
she was a player in Russia for years.
I understand that, but she whether she's got a prescription to smoke pot or not doesn't matter.
Do we know for sure that she really had that in the bag? I'm going to tell you, I was the first American journalist to ever cover a live professional boxing show in the Soviet Union and Russia, 1991. And when I came back from the airport, I took a couple of rolls of pictures. One roll, thankfully, I had in my pocket when I left, and I packed my camera. 100% I packed it. When I got back, my camera wasn't there, and one of the rolls was missing. So, hanky panky, they stole my camera.
Of course they did. Hey, listen, Putin stole the Super Bowl ring off of Kraft's hand.
Right, exactly. Putin wants to look at Robert Kraft's Super Bowl ring. He looks at it and he takes it and walks away. I mean, think of that. That's outrageous. It's sickening that a world leader would do that. We don't know for sure what Brittany Griner did. I will say this, within the United States, certain people, Americans, we're talking about, commit minor infractions when, let's say, marijuana was illegal there, and they'd be getting like a 10-year sentence or something like that for just having some pot, It's overboard. It didn't fit the crime. Technically, they broke the law, yeah, but it's a bit extreme. But this isn't about right or wrong with her to get back. She is an American citizen, but the question is, would Russia, Putin, realistically be willing to trade her for anything outside of something that's massively big in his favor?
Right, a Herschel Walker type trade. Yeah, you give me like 5 or 6 of our political prisoners. We're going to give you your basketball.
The United States would do it. The Biden administration would do it, just so we don't hear the protests and all that. I don't think Russia would do it over that. The United States would have to lift certain sanctions, that they have on Russia due to the, conflict with Ukraine. And it would be ludicrous of the United States to do something like that. And the United States wouldn't do anything like that. So what does that leave Brittany Griner? It leaves her in jail in Russia, and all of a sudden the protests is going to start up here in the United States. And who's going to be blamed when the protests start? This country, the Biden administration. And
I think it's ridiculous because it was, again, there's certain things that I would understand if it, hey, she was found with documents in there. I can't imagine that she got anywhere specifically that she would have been able to find documents, Russian documents that would have landed her as a traitor. No, they went through her stuff. They found her pot that she was trying to hide. She had it at a hidden spot. So she knew what she was doing. She tried to get it past them. It didn't get past. It didn't fly, and she got caught. And that's what makes me angry about this whole thing. That she can claim innocent all she wants. She's not innocent. In fact, she knows she's not innocent. She had to plead guilty. that she thought that they would give her a little bit of leniency by pleading guilty, and they did. They, instead of going for 40 years, they gave her 16, and that's what happens in other countries. You go to certain countries in Africa with a little bit of pot, you know what? You may not be heard from again.
Yeah.
They put you in jail. You know what I mean? So these are different. These are different worlds.
Mac was overseas and he served, and I remember Mac once telling me about the warnings that you were given.
Oh, definitely. You listen. If you were at a Turkish statue and you decided that you were going to relieve yourself on a Turkish statue, they would just cut your thing right off right there, right in front of everybody. They didn't care. And in Korea, I mean, the gangs there are ruthless. And they told us, don't go out and mess around outside. But of course, we're young and we want to go out there and have some fun. But them gangs over there are ruthless. So you don't play around overseas. It's nothing like the United States.
Agreed. And that's where I have my biggest issue here. The fact that this is news, like I said, any one of the four of us, would go over there and nobody would be going after us. We wouldn't have any political pull. I didn't even know who she was until this all occurred.
Can I say something? And this is what bothers me. You hear comments, well, if this was someone like a Tom Brady, he would have been released by now. That is utterly ridiculous. He'd have even more value to the Russians. If anything, he would be less likely to be released. But ridiculous.
You know what? Tom Brady would also not go over there with any pot.
Yeah.
He wouldn't get himself caught. That's the problem. You got to expect that they're going to go through everything because they're trying to find something, especially with the U.S. national team playing over in Russia. You got to follow our rules. You got to do the things that we say. We call the shots over there, not you. And they told her, I'm sure they told her, leave all that stuff at home. Do not bring this.
Let me play devil's advocate. And I'm not certain of her guilt in this because we hear stories about things being placed in someone else's bag.
Not true. This is, that's a whole different argument that's not true here. She brought it. She admitted to bringing it. She's like, oh, I didn't realize it was in my bag. That's bullshit. Excuse my language. That's straight bull. She knew it was there. She was smoking it while she was over there. So she knew 100%. So it's not like they placed it in there. It's not, if there was any inkling that was the case, it'd be a whole different world of fight. Like, hey, this girl has never smoked pot before in her life, and now all of a sudden she's found with a pot pen. That would be a whole different scenario, and that would be a whole different fight. This is not the case. She brought that over there. She brought that into the country, and that's a big no-no. That's a big no-no. They let her do it that entire time. They probably knew that she had it, and instead of leaving it in the place, and like she could have, she was going through customs. She was leaving the country and going through customs in Russia, and that's where they found it. So they probably knew that she had it that entire time. I'm just saying that you could say whatever. She wasn't set up here. She did it on her. She put this on. And the fact now that we are wasting government resources on her because of this angers me. Angers me to no belief.
No, but any citizen of this country who's being detained, we have an obligation to do all we can to get them out, unless they've done something that's so gruesome. Okay?
Do you think they would come after you, Jack? Do you think that the U.S. government is going to come after you? Now, you're a Hall of Fame boxing writer.
No, I wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. I wouldn't have a fraction of the value to them that a Brittany Griner would have.
Brittany Griner doesn't really have much value at all either. The only value that she has is the fact that she was playing on the national basketball team, the women's national basketball team, against the Russian national team. That's the only value that she's got. Like I said, I never even heard of her until this whole situation occurred.
There's a good WNBA player, very good WNBA player. But the point is, the other athletes immediately started coming forward, and their name got into the mix, and that elevated Brittany Griner's name. When you have a LeBron James putting down this government over the Brittany Griner situation, that pleases Russia. That's exactly what they want.
You know what?
LeBron played right into Russia's hands.
And let's be for real. Let's be 100% for real. Putin is all about money and power. I bet you if LeBron James went, called Putin up, I can imagine he could get to him. It's LeBron James. So I can imagine that if he wanted to really try, he could probably have a conversation with Putin and say, you know what? I have a ton of money. I'd like to give you $50 million to release her.
That wouldn't be enough. No.
It might not be enough, but you know what? It might start the conversation. We're talking about $50 million.
That's not realistic. Putin's not going to negotiate money with LeBron James.
But at least he would be able. LeBron James would be able to hold the conversation. I can't get a hold of Putin. I'm not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to. He would be able to. He'd be able to do it, and he's got the resources. He'd be able to at least start that negotiation. And, like I said, it wouldn't have to go through the government.
Putin would negotiate with him, but Putin conceivably would talk to him, because then Putin would put down the United States and tell LeBron to get the message out that the United States isn't negotiating in good faith.
That could very well be. All of that stuff could happen. Truth of the matter is that, like I said, I wanted to get this one done and out of the way, because this is really more of a hot bucket. But like I said, I'm not 100% on board with the way that this is being handled by our government, and I really think that it was her fault. Unfortunately, if you do the crime, you're going to have to do the time, and unfortunately, the U.S. that she's in, and she should have known better. Unfortunately. All right, let's go back to normal stuff and get Doc a little bit more involved. Question number 1, they said, because I had to jump. Should Roger Maris's 61 home runs still be considered the record, or should it be Barry Bonds' 73? Start with Doc on this one.
All right, yeah. So you're now in my wheelhouse. We can talk baseball. The record was set by Barry Bonds. The record book doesn't say this is the record based upon these certain criteria. This is the record of players who didn't do steroids. It says these are the records of the players. Now, just when Roger Maris set the record, this is the ironic thing. He was playing in a game that season, the first season ever, when they went to 162 games. Babe Ruth, when he hit 60 home runs, played in 154 games. And that's where the legendary asterisk comes up. Like, well, Maris didn't really set the record because he set it in a longer season. So then the record really is Babe Ruth's record, 60 home runs for 154 games. Maris's record is the record for 162 games. But we all know that baseball was segregated in Babe Ruth's day. So does that negate his record? And like that same year, Norm Cash hit 360 or something like that. And then he later comes out that he was using a corked bat. So does that batting record not count? I mean, I think if we start saying this record doesn't count because this guy was suspected of this, and that record doesn't count because that guy was doing this, listen, baseball at the time, if they felt that there should have been a punishment for Barry Bonds, they should have given him the punishment. And they didn't, obviously, and they let him keep playing. So at the time, whatever he was doing was fine with Major League Baseball. And since it was fine with Major League Baseball, the record counts. He hit 73 home runs. Nobody celebrated because people were fed up with baseball at that time, and they were fed up with the whole steroid thing, and they were fed up with the fact that he wore all that body armor and everything. But he set the record.
He was punished. He's not in the Hall of Fame, is he?
Well, that's different. But no, he's not in the Hall of Fame. You're correct.
Right. That's right.
But he wasn't punished at that time. And we've talked a little, Pags and Jack and I about the Hall of Fame and stuff. And the commissioner who oversaw that whole period, he's in the Hall of Fame. Managers who managed steroid guys, they're in the Hall of Fame. And people say that some of the guys in the Hall of Fame were steroid guys. But see, that's the point. How do we know? who was and who wasn't. And so his record counts. He was definitely clean. Do we know they were clean? Which guys were clean? Which guys weren't clean? And so as far as I'm concerned, I hate steroids. I hate cheating. I don't cheat. I play my hardest. I lose a lot because I'm not cheating. But listen, you play your best and you do what you can, and you use the best that you can at that time. But if the league allowed it, the league allowed it. And I just don't think we can start getting into this record doesn't count because this guy did this and that guy might have done that. And this season was this many games and et cetera, et cetera. No, Barry Bonds, for good or bad, holds the record. Wish it weren't true. Wish it were Roger Maris. He's a Yankee. Anything that when the Yankees hold records, I like it better that way. But the record is Barry Bonds.
Listen, no, the record is definitely Roger Maris's. There's no steroids involved. He did it fairly. He didn't cheat. As you say, you don't like to see anybody cheat, or you don't like to cheat. But he has the home run record. There's no doubt about it. Babe Ruth has a legitimate argument because it was less games and he did have 60 home runs. But still, Roger Maris owns that record. And Barry Bonds, again, is not even in the Hall of Fame. And if that doesn't show you that it's wrong, I don't know what to say.
I just want to add something. Records are distorted, but why can't we celebrate this? This would be the best compromise. Aaron Judge is going for the undisputed American League home run record.
Oh, yeah, they'll say that.
So
yes.
Why can't we focus on that instead of the Major League record? No one is focusing on him going for the American League home run record. And I'm going to tell you, these records a lot of times are so overrated. A circumstance dictates a record. The year Roger Maris hit 61 home runs, he was terrible in the beginning of the season. I could just picture you, Mac. If you were around then, you'd say, get rid of the bum. Send him back to Kansas City. He couldn't hit. And because he was so dreadful early in the season, they moved him up in the order right before. He hit right before Mickey Mantle. Did he hit? Wait, I'm having a brain freeze.
Yeah,
right.
I think Maris hit third and Mantle hit fourth. And
right.
I think there's a statistic that they never intentionally walked Roger Maris.
Right. They flip-flopped. Right. Maris and Mantle. Had they not flip-flopped them in the order, let's say Mantle hit right before Maris rather than vice versa, it's safe to say Mantle probably would have hit a few more home runs. Can we agree on that?
But this
and Maris probably hits a few less. Chances are that Mantle would have had a couple of more homers than Maris on the year. We'll never know for sure. And as far as the asterisk went, I was against it for a lot of years. But the more you think of it, Maris had 8 more games than Babe Ruth. If you want, and Babe Ruth is only 1 homer behind. Give him 8 more games. You mean to tell me he's probably not going to hit a couple? Maybe hits 3, 4 more. I don't know. And I can't figure this whole thing out, like after a while, with the steroid thing. The bottom line is they played. I got to tell you something about Barry Bonds. The year he hit the 73 homers, if I'm not mistaken, he set a major league record for walks. So that had to mean he was a great, great player. I know he got a share of intentional walks, but he drew a lot of walks. He showed a great batting eye. So he showed a great skill, and he actually had to hit those homers. And think of all the other guys who allegedly won steroids. They didn't approach those stats, that he had. But we do know he was helped by the performance enhancer. We do know that. But what can we do about it?
And what weren't some of the pitchers he went up against also steroid guys?
That's what I'm getting at. Like that's absolutely one of the points I was about to make is that everybody. I mean, they determined that it was like 62% of baseball was on steroids. That if you go all the way down into the minor leagues, that most of them were on steroids. It's first off, the 61 home runs with the asterisk. I mean, so let's I'm going to change this to football for a second. Does that mean when they went from 14 games to 16 games, they should have put asterisks to all those records? And now that they got 17 games, they should definitely put asterisks because, hey,
Yes,
they did
between
that in
14
14 or 16 or
rushing
17.
yards over season, 14 to 17 games. 3 extra games is substantial.
Of course it is. You're right. It is substantial, but they changed that. At Major League Baseball made the change. It wasn't the players that said, hey, we need to have 6 more games or 8 more games. No, Major League Baseball made it. So there's no asterisk. There should never have been an asterisk. If the player said, hey, we need to play 8 more games, we need to make it a 162 game season, then I'd say, okay, well, Major League Baseball was really against this 8-game switch, and that's when he hit those home runs. So we're going to put the asterisk there. Major League Baseball was the one that did it because they wanted more money, because it all goes back to the money. So why put the asterisk on there in the first place? No, they should have never have done that. And the same thing with Barry Bonds, the same thing with, and now when you were talking about Maris and Mantle, and they were in a home run derby with themselves, weren't they? Weren't they in for a little while? I mean, that was what was going on. When McGuire and Sosa did it, they were competing with each other, and one got 70, one got 66. I remember because I followed that intently, and then you have Bonds who was over and above everybody else. Just literally was able to, just crush, with 73 home runs and had like 221 or 212 walks that year. So, I mean, it's all being said and done. He still had to hit the ball. I'm so tired of the crying because it's a lot of Yankee people. It's a lot of New York people that make this cry. That say, oh, well, Maris is the real one because he didn't do steroids. How do we know that he didn't do steroids either? You know what I mean? It's like,
come on, he didn't do steroids. He might
how
have
do we know that? How do we know that there weren't different performance enhancing drugs?
I don't think steroids were even around at that time, Pax.
I don't believe that. I believe that they had something else. They had something else.
They might have had speed. They might have speed, so they the bat moved quicker or whatever, but they didn't have steroids back then.
Well, all right. So even speed. So maybe he was on the equivalent to Adderall illegally, but we don't know that. Hit the blood tie. We didn't get it. Hey, you hit 61 home runs. We're going to make sure that you are drug free.
Listen. I'm just finding this National Institute on Drug Abuse. I'm just going to start reading from the beginning of the article. Testosterone was first synthesized in Germany in 1935, and it was used medically to treat depression. Professional athletes began misusing anabolic steroids during the 1954 Olympics.
There you go.
So they did have it. But no, we never heard it used in baseball.
Right.
Okay.
Because of course they're not going to talk about it.
Who's the all-time hit king? Who is the most hits?
Pete Rose.
Okay. Pete Rose, I just looked it up, played in 3,562 games. He beat Ty Cobb's record. Ty Cobb played in 3,034 games. So do we then say, well, Pete Rose isn't the all-time hit king because he played in 500 more games than Ty Cobb? No, we don't do that. He played in more games.
No, there's a difference involved. Ty Cobb had the option of playing in more games if he could have kept up. It's not a schedule of games wasn't set.
Yes. Pete Rose played in the era 162 game season.
How many seasons did Pete Rose play compared to Ty Cobb?
I'll look it up right now.
More seasons. Yeah.
I'll tell you right now.
He was able to keep a level of excellence a little longer than Ty Cobb was. That's why he was rewarded with the number. Derek Jeter's number 6 on the all-time hit list because he played for 20 years, not because he's the 6th greatest hitter.
Agreed. But again, he played in 162 games. And then sometimes he had a tie, which means that they played in 163 games. Does that mean all the hits that he got in that one extra game don't count either?
Wait a minute. Here's your answer. Ty Cobb played in 24 years. Pete Rose played in 24 years. Okay? So there you go. Ty Cobb in his last year. Let me just give you some batting averages. Last year, 41 years old, Ty Cobb at 323. The year before, he had 357. Okay, now he's only playing in 79 games and 95 games in some of these years, but the year before that, he hit 339. The year before that, he hit 378. The year before that, he hit 338. You're getting the picture. Pete Rose, in his last years, here you go, 219, 264. Then he hit 365 that one year, 259, 286, 245. Pete Rose was hanging around to break the hit record, but it took him 500 plus more games. Does that take his record away? I don't think so. He played in the games. He got the hits. Give him the record.
Listen, I feel Bonds is the legitimate home run record. I don't want to get away from the heart of it. And Pags feels that's the legitimate record. You do, Doc. Mac doesn't. I think it's 3-1. And that's that.
There you go. So sorry, Mac. You lost on that one. Here we go. I'm going to switch to this. This might be a good one to take into the break. What is the hardest sport to officiate or referee?
Hockey.
Start with Mac on this one.
Hockey's the hardest. They're on skates. They got players flying around them. They're checking each other. It's the fastest playoff sport there is. So if I had to say the toughest to ref would definitely be hockey. You should like that, Pat.
I could agree with that a little bit. I think out of all of that, I think that calling balls and strikes isn't easy. You know what I mean? It's a very unique job to have. I think because there are so many rules in football, that being an umpire on that staff is tough because you need to know all the rules for that.
They do have a lot of officials though watching.
Right. No, and that's the difference. That's why I say specifically the umpire is for an NFL game, not a baseball game. The umpire for an NFL game is got to know all the different official, the rules for each official. But I would have to say, like, hockey's a little different because now they have two referees. When it was one referee, it was definitely much harder. Now that there's two referees, it's a little bit different. I personally say calling of balls and strikes. And so much so that they want to take that away and make that mechanical.
Doc?
Okay. I'm going to agree with Pags. That was my answer. I think in all the other sports, there is a committee of people who are at least involved in some of that decision-making or that are watching various aspects of the play. In baseball, when you're doing home plate, that's, I think, the hardest job because you are the only guy who's involved in every single pitch. So every single pitch comes in, you've got to be on and you've got to make a decision. And then once it's hit, you then have other things you have to think about. And you're not only just looking at where the pitch is, you're looking at whether the guy swung or he didn't swing. And yeah, so I think you're sort of alone when you're the home plate umpire in baseball. And for that reason, I think Mac is right. I think physically the hardest thing to do I think the hardest one to do is skate and also ref a game while these guys are flying around going 9,000 miles an hour and skating into you. And yeah, that's definitely hard. Hey, here's another one, Jack, and you'd be able to best understand this and because you've lived it and your whole life. How about reffing a boxing match, a world championship boxing match, especially if you're a little guy and you're doing like a heavyweight champion? And you've got to sort of get between George Foreman and Muhammad Ali or something like that and break them apart. That might be the hardest thing to officiate.
It's difficult, especially if you have a small referee and you have a couple of big heavyweights. I was always a big believer you train a good-sized referee for big heavyweights, someone who could get in there in the middle, and headbutts are so hard to pick up. I've talked to referees. That's the hardest thing they have to deal with, a fighter getting butt and cut, and that's very crucial. There's a big fight tonight, for example, Canelo Alvarez against Gennady Golovkin, and it's conceivable they're going to clash heads at some point, and one of them is going to get cut. and the fight might eventually have to be stopped because of the cut. And there's going to be big implications if that happened. If the fight's over 4 rounds and they clash heads, they're supposed to go to the scorecards. Whoever's ahead at the time it stopped gets the decision. But if it's not a butt, if it's not a clash of heads and they say the cut was caused by a punch, then the fighter who's cut and gets pulled out loses the fight. So there's a lot of controversy with that. Mac's answer is intriguing with hockey. I never thought of that. It was self-preservation. Even though this isn't my answer, what about tennis before the replays when you had a maniac like John McEnroe, the ball hit on the line? You have to be very intimidated if you're a referee, you know, to come, a lines judge to come out there because it happens so quick. Balls and strikes is difficult, but not quite the hardest. I'm going to tell you why, guys. Because you don't take a tremendous amount of harassment because the umpires are basically in charge. If someone's going to bench jockey and be yelling at you about balls and strikes, you merely send them home. You kick them out of the game. It's been done a lot. Umpires don't have patience with getting hollered at from the bench. And the managers and the players know that. They have their limits. The batter, too. He drops his bat and he gets in the umpire's face. He's gone. He kind of knows that. So my answer is basketball. And I'm going to tell you, especially a high-level basketball, you watch an NBA game, I mean, these guys are getting harassed the whole time. All the time they're getting complaints by the world class, you know, by the players. I just want to go back to hockey for 1 second. Many years ago, and I'm not going to mention the school, okay? A buddy of mine who I worked with, he coached a hockey team, you know, at one of the universities. I go to the game, and when I get to the game, it's a nice feeling. It's refreshing, college athletics. Then the game begins. I'm hearing the players abusing the refs, cursing them, you blankety blank, blank, blank. And I'm like bugging out. I'm figuring this is supposed to be college athletics, the purity of it. And then I was very naive, but my answer would be basketball because it's such a quick game and the calls are so subjective, whether a guy travels, whether there's contact. So basketball's it for me.
Yeah, the fact that they have 3 of them now on the court though makes things a lot easier for them, you know, and I think that's what kind of takes that away. I mean, going along the same thought process as Mac, you could then say soccer. You know, I know that soccer never gets any play here, but there's only one red soccer, you know, and he's got to be in charge of all of that. Obviously, the offsides have got to be done by the side judges, but you know, every call that gets made, any tackle that gets done improperly, if he was inside the box or outside the box, the running that's got to go back and forth because he's got to be on the ball a lot more than a lot of those players. So he's definitely moving a lot more than, you know, kind of like the refs and the linesmen in hockey. They're always moving and such like that. So it's a little bit more of a taxing type of situation. But I still don't think that soccer's referee is the hardest. You know, it's all in terms ambiguous. You know what I mean? It's like everybody's going to have it. It's tough to officiate a game in general. Any game doesn't matter whether it's chess or it's, you know, hockey or it's baseball or what have you. So to try to say, hey, this job's harder than this one makes it a little bit, you know, tough to say because, I mean, the rule books are on these, you know, in these professional games are thick. You got to know every rule. You know, and that's why I say, you know, being an umpire in football might be really difficult because it's those ridiculous, crazy rules that never get pulled out except one time a year or one time every 3 years where it actually comes up in play. Where it's like, hey, the rule says this, you know, and you got to make a call regarding that.
You know, along that line, they had a documentary on ESPN. It was a 30 for 30, I believe, with Tom Brady and I can't think of the guy's name on the Raiders with the tuck rule. Yeah, have you seen that documentary
Yeah.
on the tuck rule? That was just phenomenal because they have Brady and Woodson, right? Uh, Watching the game in real time together and then talking about, is his arm going forward or did he bring it back and was it a pass? And the two of them breaking this down, having this conversation. I just thought it was phenomenal. I
Well,
saw that about a week or two ago.
They were teammates in college at Michigan. That was the weird thing about it. So they had a relationship because Brady would be throwing against Woodson in practice, when they were in college as teammates. So that was
Yeah,
kind
so
of
if you haven't seen that, and then of course they talk about how the tuck rule wasn't really ever called, and then it stayed a rule, but a couple of years ago they got rid of the rule. So it's a great point that Bags is
Yeah.
making, especially in football, about the rules getting
I'm gonna
changed and modified and things like that.
just something about officiating, and this will be more for you, Doc, really for you directly. If you had to officiate and what would be harder, high school or on a professional level? High school where you don't know anyone in the community, you're a stranger, but you're officiating, knowing the way some parents can be on the high school level, they get carried away as opposed to coaching, a professional game. What's harder? I got a feeling I'd be less comfortable doing a high school game.
Yeah, I think it all depends on the situation, the community. Some communities have very strict rules. I know where I live that there were very strict rules for even parents volunteering at the recreation level. Like you cannot talk to the referee, and if you do, and if you're suspended, you'll never coach again. So I think a lot of that depends on school cultures. They have all sorts of awards in New Jersey for the school that had the best sportsmanship that they give out for each season for each sport and things like that. And those rules, or those awards are taken seriously by, I think, most of, if not every school, because that's what they're trying to promote. So I think it all depends. I think it depends on the community, depends on the situation, depends on whoever the group of people are at that very moment. But I think if, for the most part, if you do a good job as the referee and you're balanced and you're fair and your reputation precedes yourself. I'm not a ref, but I think that can go a long way to mitigating, some of the nonsense.
Yeah, I would agree with some of that. I think that what you're talking about specifically, Jack, is the intimacy of the game in
Yeah.
comparison,
To the
where on a
professional.
professional level, you are shielded. I mean, you could hear the fans yell, you could hear the players.
The difference is, Pax, take you, for example. They can tolerate you at an Eagle game, a Philly game, a Sixer game, a Flyer game. But if you did that, harassed official during a high school game the same way.
Again, you're right. It has to do with the intimacy. It has to
Yeah.
do with the intimacy of that. I mean, obviously, when there are 50,000 or even in a hockey game, 20,000 people that are there watching the game, all that stuff falls on deaf ears. And again, using me as the example, I'm not going below the belt. I might say, "Ref, you suck," and do that type of chant. But ultimately, I'm not going beyond that. I'm not taking it personal. When there's a bad call that's out there, I may be angry about that call specifically. Like, what are you, blind? Blah 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 blah. Again, now if I'm at a high school game, if I'm at where I graduated from, and I went to there, to go watch a game, and I start going and attacking the referee there. Well, being as loud as I am, I'm going to be heard. And not only that, like that's where I would expect if I'm at a home game that my school would be like, "Hey, listen, you either have to stop doing this or you have to go. You can't continue to do this because you start inciting. It starts inciting issues, and you don't want to do that. And that's what the intimacy. When you have somebody who when you have that parent that starts yelling at a baseball game. That's because this is where this happens most frequently, I feel. When the when it's going after an umpire, And the umpire is there. I mean, let's face it, the umpire is getting paid $40 or $50 to call a high school game. He's there by himself. He's not loved by either team whatsoever. You know what I mean? And now you got parents that are going to start. Once one parent starts, that emboldens another parent and then another parent. And then ultimately you could start a riot really on one sideline if done the right way. And
Well,
that's
listen,
where I feel.
It was national news of an umpire just packing up and leaving the game after getting harassed by the parents. One parent yelled, "You're being unprofessional." Are they kidding? I didn't blame the umpire because the kids were there under these either parental supervision or they had permission to travel home on their own. So it's not like he left little kids there where he had to be watching them until the parents showed up. He wasn't a babysitter. And that was it. I don't blame him. He wasn't going to take that harassment.
I agree. And I actually watched an interview of him after the fact. He was actually the interview was on TikTok. They did a 3-minute interview and they discussed kind of what was going on with that whole situation and why he was a younger kid. He was only like 22 years old, and he's not taking it from those parents. Ultimately, the one who yelled that you're being unprofessional wasn't one of the ones that was yelling. She was one of the ones that was, but ultimately she understood that now my kid didn't get in yet, and now he's not going to get a chance to get into this game because you're leaving. And she put the onus on the ref saying, "Hey, well, you got to deal with this type of stuff. This is part of being a referee." It's not part of being a referee. And that's the hard part for a parent, a mother who's really just more concerned about her child and wants the child to get into the game. And now the game's being cut short before her child gets a chance to get in the game because the referee is not going to deal with, or the umpire is not going to deal with the flack that he's got to deal with.
You can complain to an official within reason, and it shouldn't be the parents. It could be an opposing coach. If it's basketball, it's a competitive game. An official calls a foul, and when you play, so you don't think it's a foul, you could say, "Come on, ref, he didn't foul him. He didn't hit his hand there." There are limits. I mean, because certain sports are competitive. It is competition, but there's a difference between that and harassment and the parents harassing, an official. I mean, there's a big difference involved.
When I coached football, when we got together for the first meeting, I let all the parents know. I let them know, if you're going to say anything to a coach out of whack or a umpire, we're pulling your kid out and he's gone for the season. And that's it. So that's how we handle it there.
Well, and I guess that's a good way of being able to do that. And ultimately, I mean, like I said, I understand being a catcher in slow pitch softball and playing in other sports where you deal with referees. I mean, again, I get to play a little bit on the other side where I don't have to yell and scream at the refs. I try to coerce them. It's like when a couple of calls go against me or against my team in a softball game, obviously I'm not trying to yell at the umpire. I'm back there and I'm like, "Hey, listen, is it now? Do we get the possession arrow at some point?" And ultimately,
when Doc can't find the strike zone,
it never happens. Doc throws strikes.
I heard one of Doc's sons was yelling at the umpire.
That's not true. Never, 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 never.
So, but I mean, but that's again, and some parents actually can do it the right way. In between innings, the umpire always goes to the defense line to grab his water, grab a drink, and do whatever. You could go up to the umpire. I mean, the umpire understands that he's going to make a couple of mistakes here and there. And if a parent does it right, you actually can get further with the umpire than by yelling at him. Be like, "Hey, I just want to know what you were thinking on that one throw. Was it a strike? Did you see it?" Like, you start asking those questions rather than berating an umpire because you thought that he saw it wrong. Because ultimately it's like, again, it looked close. It was close. I might have gotten it wrong. And some umpires will straight right out, "Yeah, I got that one wrong." It's like it. but it's the you attract more flies with honey, or more bees with honey, whatever it is that thing is, where you actually, by talking to them, you could sway them on future calls rather than immediately it's like, oh, hold on, that's a really close play, he's out because the guy over here keeps yelling at me, and now I want him to yell at me more because he's all pissed off at me in the first place. That's kind of what it is. It's like, oh, I got that one wrong, watch me get another one wrong against you. You know what I mean? It's just like almost like poking the bear a little bit more to see how far you can poke. And I feel like that happens to a certain extent. And it's a shame because it should be unbiased, but we're human. That's what makes officiating hard to begin with, is that we are all human. We all make mistakes. And, when it's in a professional game, that mistake is, with short of replay now, where you're able to fix those mistakes, you have to live with it, and that's the end of that. So I think either way, being an officiate in any of these games is hard to do. Is really hard to do. I know we're a little early, but let's take a break now since we're just about at the halfway point, and we can come back and hit the rest of these questions. There's a couple good ones in here, and maybe I'll sneak one of my patented, this one wasn't on the list type situation, but we'll come back right after these messages and talk more about our Saturday debate show.
Stick around.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Supporting the needs of our veterans. That's the goal of all of us at Team AmVets. Like Mitch, Carlos, and Kevin from our Welcome Home team that brings furniture to our vets.
We are Team AmVets.
Or Linda from our thrift stores who brings you great bargains every day.
I am Team AmVets.
And John, who picks up your thrift store donations that support California veterans programs.
I am Team AmVets.
Visit our website or a Team AmVets thrift store to donate or shop today.
Join the team!
can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready. I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, get an each.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And we're back. As Jack got back here, just to the quickness in the nick of time, that's why I played that extra little bit. I was like, I got to give him that extra 10 seconds just to make sure he's in good shape. So let's go back to questions here. One question that I saw that kind of sparked my interest here, and I wanted to know what you guys think. And even though Doc, I know that this isn't necessarily in your wheelhouse, you might be able to even have an opinion on this. According to ESPN, the University of Texas spent nearly $280,000 for a recruiting visit by Arch Manning and 8 others. Can this be justified as morally correct? Start with you, Jack, since the question came from you.
Yeah, I was astonished when I heard that. And the 280,000, the total is actually a lot more, because over the years they've spent millions and millions of dollars. These universities, they try to keep up with one another. These are educational institutions. I understand big-time college sports needs big-time athletes, big-time coaches, and I understand that it's a money thing as well. But when you're recruiting a kid to try to get him to go to your school, there should be limits. First off, you take him around campus. You show him all over to see whether he likes the campus. You let him know what courses he could be taking, what he likes, whether he wants to be a phys ed major, psychology major, an accounting major, whatever, computers, whatever the heck he wants. And you take him around. I can understand you take him around and you have a nice lunch meeting with the other students, stuff like that. But the things that they're doing, like they're catering, taking them to play fancy golf, 5-star hotels and the whole thing. I mean, it's crazy the amount of money that they're laying out. They're giving him the red carpet treatment, and these are kids just attending a college. And to spend that amount of money, you know what that money could be used for? I mean, think of all the departments in the school that could use the money. Think of even the athletic department that's probably lacking in some of the smaller sports, okay, as well. And it's ludicrous. There's no need for 8 recruits. $280,000 is spent. Think of that, 8 recruits. So you mean to tell me if I'm going to get my math set, that's
almost, it's like $32,000.
That's like about $35,000 per visit for a student. I mean, what are they giving them for that? 35 grand to just visit your school on average? It's mind-boggling to me. And just to try to get the kid to attend your school, it's absolutely morally wrong. There should be a cap put on every single school with this. It's just insane.
I really don't think it's morally wrong at all. I think it's, as you said, financially, it might be a little wrong. But listen, everybody's doing it, guys. Everybody's offering all this money to these players to come to their schools. Arch Manning is one of the best young quarterbacks in high school right now. He's going to be great in college. He's going to be great in the pros. I would think so anyway. But with his pedigree and his coaching, he'll get from his uncle and from Peyton. So they're all doing it, Jack. I mean, why wouldn't somebody want to take advantage of that if they're all doing it? Arch Manning, as I said, unbelievable high school quarterback. He should be really good in college. This guy is a game changer. I don't think it's morally wrong at all. I think it's financially motivated, and I think that like I said, everybody's doing it. So why not?
Matt, could I throw this at you now? Do you see the day ever coming? Okay, as crazy as this seems, you sign a great high school player for 4 years. He has to attend the school, and you give him a contract. It's going to get to the point where you're giving the kid $20 million to attend school for 4 years.
Yeah, I definitely see that coming. As you know, we talked about in the past, and everybody laughed at me. The draft is going to be coming. There's going to be agents involved in this, and I'm telling you guys, this is something that it's the genie's out of the bottle. It's going to happen. So I think definitely Arch Manning has the right to get what he wants.
I'm going to agree with Mac. I don't think it's morally wrong, and I think everyone said it so far. All the colleges are doing these types of things, the big colleges at least. And I think sometimes we look at money as if the money goes to point A, then it doesn't go to point B. But the athletic department has a budget, and within that budget, they're going to spend a certain amount of money on recruiting. And what we're not seeing is the other end of that. We're not seeing, let's say, and I don't know this because I don't look at their books, but what'd you just say? They spent $280,000 to bring in 8 kids, including Arch Manning. Well, if Arch Manning goes to that school, how much money is he going to generate?
Texas, and he is going to Texas after all.
Okay, but how much money is he going to generate for that school with TV revenue, big games, sales of merchandise, jerseys, publicity, other kids then going to that school, etc. They're not operating in a vacuum. They're not just going, hey, we're going to throw all this money at Arch Manning. They're saying it's worth us to invest X amount of dollars to try to get Arch Manning to our school because we feel that if he goes here, we are then going to be worth X more amount of dollars. So it's not like they're taking money out of the biology department and saying we're not going to be able to do X, Y, or Z because we're trying to recruit Arch Manning. It's part of I would assume, it's part of the athletic budget, but that budget is going to then, they're not going to spend money if it's not going to bring the perspective, the idea that more money is going to come right back to the college. They're going to spend money to make more money. So no, I don't think it's morally wrong. And again, I don't know how many colleges do this, but the sense is, after listening to everybody here, that this is what happens at all the colleges because they're trying to get the best kids there. And I think, as Mac is saying, I think it's bringing up the bigger question: is college sports really professional sports, the way they handle it and the way the schools make so much money, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, if they're generating millions of dollars, then you can afford to spend a couple $100,000 to make a couple of million. It's just financial sense for them and all the prestige that goes along with bringing in the great new college player, especially if he wins them a Heisman or a national championship or any of that kind of stuff.
But what do they? But think of it: 35,000 per student. What can be? He's just visiting the darn school,
right? But when the Yankees, and again, I'm equating it to the professionals because the money there is basically, treating these colleges like professionals. I think the idea that college sports is amateurs is silly in so many ways. What was it that got Garrett Cole to come to the Yankees? Supposedly, Brian Cashman sent him a bottle of his favorite wine or champagne that you can only get from.
Well, but that's the Yankee. We're talking about colleges.
But I'm equating it to the same thing.
All the colleges, but if you don't allow any of the colleges to do that, then it's a level playing field. And it's
that's a different question. That's it. Yeah. Should they have rules that say this is what you can spend? Okay. That's a different question.
But it's not level. It's not level at all. I mean,
it'll never be level.
No, you got the bigger schools that can afford this stuff, and the smaller schools that can't. So it's not level. It's just the opposite.
And the kids aren't going to go. I don't know. They're not going to go to Rutgers. That's a big school over Alabama. If both schools are drafting you, you're going to go to Alabama because it's got the history and it's got the prestige.
Probably, but it depends the situation. Rutgers has turned out some NFL players, as well.
Yeah, but Rutgers is not perennial number one team.
No.
That's
You
what he's
choice,
kind of saying.
You're going
there.
to Michigan. You have a choice to go to if you want to play football, you could go to Michigan or Rutgers. Where are you going? Even if the recruiting money's the same.
I mean, Michigan, but listen, I could say schools that should be smaller, like Villanova. Villanova could compete, I think, basically with any college basketball team because they have the pedigree, they have the tradition.
And they do.
Right, but you're not going there
and
for
they
football.
do compete. Well, I don't know if they will anymore now that the coach is gone, but it's like I've been thinking about this NIL money, and obviously it's the Wild West in the way that money is being given out. And I thought of a way that they could curb this or at least create something different than just giving money to these kids for hoping that they're going to be good athletes in college. If they dictated that, listen, if you want to give one of these kids NIL money, that you also have to match dollar for dollar and give to the university, and the university has got to use that money specifically for scholarships for non-athletes, students. I'd be willing to bet that you would find that there'd be a lot less NIL money floating around. Because if they had to double up the money, they got to match dollar for dollar and take care of the non-athletes. All of a sudden, you're not going to see these million tracks. Now, I'm sure they ain't going to listen to me. They don't pay me enough money, and they're going to say, oh, well, it won't work for this reason, won't work for this reason, won't work for this reason. Truth of the matter is it would work, and it would start to actually value students that can't afford to go to that school now to be able to go, underprivileged students. And I think that would be a smart way of addressing this. And if I was in the NCAA, which I am not, that would be the way that I would start to try to push this regulation. You want to spend money? Great. You're going to spend more now. Or you're going to give these kids less. You could still spend the $2 million, but you're only going to give $1 million to the kid. You're going to give $1 million to the university, and the university must use that as scholarship money. They cannot just take that money and give it to their teachers or give it to the president of the university where he just gets $1 million bonus. Doesn't work that way. Has to be regulated like that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out my ass here, but I think that would make a lot more sense. And
Pags, who's the one checking this? You're gonna let that check.
It would have to be the NCAA. This, like I said, the NCAA is powerless right now, and they have to try to figure out a way to be able to re-achieve some of the power that they had back in the 80s and 90s. They've lost it over the last 25, 30 years. And I understand that. And so, but if they want to make themselves relevant, that's the way to do it. Following the dollar. And you know what? In the process of that, you would be able to start to charge some of these schools more money to be able to get more staff so that they could actually look after this. That each person of the NCAA has 10 schools that they get to monitor to make sure that all the books are working that way. Because I'm sure that there's still going to be people stealing. You know what I mean? That's what it would come down to, is that money is going to get misappropriated a certain way. But I'm just talking about in terms of real, hey, we need the NCAA is now just, is a shell of itself. It doesn't really exist. Everybody else is doing their own thing, and the NCAA has no say about it. Well, this would be a way for the NCAA to get some say back. Just my opinion.
I'm going to go back just to the idea that if they're spending the money, they're making the money. And and as Mac had said before, none of this is equal. How much does a ticket cost? And I have no idea. I'm just putting the question out there. To go to a football game at Nebraska, how much does it cost to go to a football game at Texas A&M? How much does it cost to go to a football game at Rutgers? And then how many seats does the stadium and Notre Dame have? And how many seats does the stadium in Alabama have? And I mean, right from the start, none of this is equal. Some schools have bigger stadiums and charge more money, so they're bringing in more money every single time they have a game. And other schools don't have facilities like
I
that.
venture to think, Doc, I don't know for sure, okay? And I'm just venturing a guess here that the other big universities that are never in the picture for the national championship put in a comparable amount of people as the ones competing, okay? As the ones that the Alabamas, the Georgias. That would be my guess, that the fan base, it's not the same around the country nationally, because this panel's aware of the Alabamas, the Georgias, the big name schools, but the ones that aren't quite as big, that have been around a while, like the UCLAs, the USCs, you know, they're getting a comparable amount of people. And my guess is they'd be getting a comparable amount of revenue as far as people showing up to the stadium. The TV deals are another matter, though.
No, I think, yeah, I agree. I think they're all part of the same mix, right? Some schools are going to bring in more money, and some schools aren't. And if a player, and you can recruit a player to come to your school, and you feel he's going to make you more money, well, then you're going to have to spend money to try to convince that player to come to your school. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? I'm not saying it's right. That's not morally wrong, but it's the system that they're working within, and that's just the way it is, right? So, and again, if you had your choice, where would you go to school? If you were a top athlete, would you go to a top school that's often in the big bowl games, or would you go to a tiny school that's often not in the bowl games? And then it comes down to where's the school located, right? Like, would you rather go play in Miami, or would you rather go play in the middle of Piscataway, New Jersey? I don't think most people are dying to go play and live in Piscataway for 4 years.
Mac is a cold weather person. Mac will take that cold weather anytime.
He'd go to Syracuse then.
Miami. Mac will pick Syracuse over Miami.
Well, my first choice, of course, would be with UConn Huskies. That would be where I would.
Right. But I understand what you're saying, Doc, a little bit in terms of, hey, you got to spend the money to be able to bring the guy in. And once the guy in, like, that kid doesn't see any of the revenue from sales of jerseys and all the, like, any of his likeness and things like that. That I understand that type of stuff. And I agree that there are funds. I got to imagine that they have probably $5 million of recruiting fund for Saban. That's probably a modest estimate. You know what I mean? That they probably spend a lot more money just him traveling around to go see these guys. They go knock on the doors in the off season and meet with the parents and things of that nature, and then getting that kid there. It's, you know, if this kid is over, if Alabama where he's at, where he wants to go to school, but the kid's in Iowa or Idaho, you know what I mean? And Saban, because he's a five-star chip here, or, you know, and he wants to go out there, it's going to cost him money. You think Saban goes coach? No, I'm sure he goes first class, you know, and he stays in nice places and eats good meals, and, you know, then he goes, you know, he has nice suits. When John Chaney, and I can only speak like this, John Chaney, the coach of Temple basketball, he wanted to buy a car. I was a car salesman at the time. I sold him a Chrysler Crossfire. He had the first one in Pennsylvania. And do you think he bought that? Nope. Temple paid the whole thing. And he sold that car because it was the first one in Pennsylvania, $25,000 over list price. Because he wanted to be the first one. It looked ridiculous trying to get in and out of that thing because he was 6'7", and that car is a little compact car. But I'm just saying that he didn't pay a dime for that. The Temple paid for the entire vehicle. You know what I mean? And that's small. I mean, that's really just a small thing. It's a $75,000 car, which is nothing nowadays. But even then, we're talking still 20 years. That was a lot of money for a car. And the university just signed the check because he gets what he wants. And I got to imagine that happens at all of these universities.
And you got to throw the boosters in there, right, guys? They're the businessmen offering all this money, having all these players, doing all these things, giving them like packs of cars and all that stuff. You got to put them involved. They're part of the whole process.
And some schools have bigger booster programs and deeper pockets and deeper endowments. Some schools have ginormous endowments. And then there's schools that are saying we're going to prioritize academics. We're going to take the best student athletes rather than just the best athletes. And all of those things are into the mix. So there's going to be schools that can't compete or won't compete because they're going to be looking for kids who are more of a student than an athlete. There's going to be schools that are going to compete more because they're looking for kids who are more of an athlete than a student. Yeah. And this is, Pags called it the Wild West. This is how they're doing it to try to get the best kids for their program at their school to try to, at least the teams that want to win these things, to try to be able to win these bowl games and these championship cuts and these Final Fours and all of that. So, and
a lot of people say, whether it's true or not, Notre Dame. I mean, you've got to have great grades to stay and play football at Notre Dame. They're not gonna just let you come there to play football.
Right. When was the last time they won a national championship?
I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like when you went to Miami and they had a class that was called underwater basket weaving, where they went to the beach. That's where they did. That's where the class was. It was at the beach. Do you think any of those football players did any underwater basket weaving? No, they sat there on the beach. That was the class. You know, so I mean, they had to take out of the curriculum because they knew it was ridiculous. You know what I mean? But it came out. I think that was back in like the 90s where you heard about that. It was some ridiculous type of class where the football players all got to take the class and they just wound up going to the beach. And that's maybe it was like geological sand samples. You know what I mean? That was what the class is. That you picked up a glass of sand and you got to talk about that glass of sand and then you got an A. So it was ridiculous how they were able to pad he gets an A in this underwater basket weaving class, so now he's got a B average rather than a D average. It's just I can imagine a lot of that stuff happens at a lot of these universities as well, where they're taking remedial math where, you know what 2 + 2 is? Perfect. You get an A. You know what I mean? And that's, to make sure that they can do that. And even at Notre Dame, these aren't Ivy League schools that if they want their player to play, he's going to play.
Great point.
So, all right, moving on. Here, there's another one back in the Doc's wheelhouse. Who deserves to be the American League MVP so far? Judge or Ohtani?
All right. So Shohei Ohtani is doing something that nobody has ever really done in the history of baseball. He's a great hitter and he's a great pitcher. And he's doing it, and he had a great year last year, and he won the MVP, and he's having a great year this year. But there is no question, and I didn't know this was going to be the next question, so I don't have the numbers in front of me. But basically, Aaron Judge leads the major leagues in the American League in virtually every offensive category, and it's not even close. And if the idea is that Ohtani does things that nobody else does, well, then he has to be the MVP, and then he has to be the MVP next year and the year after and the year after and the year after, because he's doing something that nobody else does. And if that's the argument, then he's the MVP, but there's no sense to ever have the argument because nobody else can do what he does until there's somebody else who does that. But if it's who's the player who's having the most amazing season, it's absolutely Aaron Judge. And I could pull up the numbers where he's even only playing right field and center field. He has a higher WAR than Ohtani does, who's pitching and hitting. And just a little note about Ohtani, and I love Ohtani, but this idea that he's doing things that no one else does is absolutely true. But The only comparison is Babe Ruth before he got to the Yankees, when he'd play a little bit of outfield and he'd pitch for the Red Sox. But the difference there is Babe Ruth played a little bit of outfield and he pitched for the Red Sox. You know, Babe Ruth might have been able to do what Ohtani's doing if on his off days he could DH and not play the outfield. I mean, that's a big difference. There wasn't a DH when Babe Ruth played. Ohtani basically pitches and then he DHs. It's not like he's playing in the field a whole lot, if ever. So he's DHing and pitching. He's not playing the outfield and pitching, which is a little bit different. But anyway, I'm a big Ohtani fan. He's having a great year, but the player having the most remarkable year. And if you want me to pull up all the numbers, Aaron Judge is first in home runs, first in RBIs, first in slugging, first in on base percentage, slugging percentage, and all this kind of stuff. And the other argument you have to make is the word valuable, which I usually think the award means the most impressive player of the year. But if you're going to say valuable, Judge's team is in first place. They've been in first place all year. And Ohtani's team is basically in last place or second to last place. And that's where they've been all year. So he's not, without Judge, the Yankees are not a first place team. Without Ohtani, the Angels are probably right where they are.
I mean, I don't have that much to say because Doc at the very end summed it up for me. It's called Most Valuable Player. If the award was the best player in the American League, now you have a real good discussion going on because Ohtani is a real top of the line pitcher as well as a very good everyday player. So if you combine his overall value, not to the team, but his overall value as an individual player, it's comparable to Judge's, as amazing as Judge has been, because now you have a guy who pitches and is a position player and does both extremely well. But it's most valuable player. The Angels are 32.5 games out of first place. Without Ohtani, what are they going to be? 37.5 games out of first place? Who cares? He's a very little value to the team as far as winning and losing. And as far as Judge goes, the Yankees, instead of being about 5 games or so in first place, would probably be a few games out of first place, at least. So Judge has been far more valuable. That's what it's called, most valuable player. If you want to give it to Ohtani, you got to change the name of the award to the best player. Best player, not most valuable. And even then, you can make a great argument that Judge gets the best player award, but at least it's a discussion point. You know, we could have a lively debate on it, but to me, this isn't a lively debate if you talk about most valuable player to his team. Now, if I'm going to play a part of an attorney, devil's advocate here, I'm going to say, well, Ohtani brings in all these people as a gate attraction. What does he mean in TV revenue? But doesn't Judge do that for the Yankees? So he counters what Ohtani does. Judge wins this argument hands down.
I'm going to surprise both of you, and I might lose my Yankee card here, even though it's mine. Definitely Ohtani. Ohtani is the best, the most valuable player. Listen, they all say good pitching always beats good hitting, right? So how can you not say that a guy that plays first, plays right, pitches, steals, his whole game is unbelievable? How can you say Ohtani is not the most valuable player? And I get what you're saying about the team in the place where they're placed at, but how can you not say he's the most valuable player and the best in I say the whole league? Ohtani does something that no one's ever done. And you might say Ruth could have, should have. We don't know. We sure don't know that. Ohtani, pitching beats good hitting, guys. And if that's not valuable and being the best, I don't know what is.
So I've been sitting here while you guys have been talking, and I've been looking at a couple of different things, specifically about Aaron Judge against Ohtani, but really more Aaron Judge against everybody else. And, you know, I still don't really understand what WAR is and how that's really figured out. But he is literally over 2 points, 2 full points above everybody else. His on base percentage, or OPS, is higher than everybody else. His slugging percentage is higher than everybody else. His on base percentage is higher than everybody else. He's 4th in average. He is 4th in hits, number 1 in home runs, number 1 in runs, number 1 in RBIs. I think if it was anybody else that we were talking about this, that there would be no question they would be the MVP. But we've got somebody who is not just batting, he's also pitching. And I think that when you put Ohtani in the mix for Cy Young, he doesn't even register. And if he registered on that, I think that there would be more say. Again, he's a good pitcher. I think he's 6th in the AL for strikeouts. He's got a pretty decent record. He's done things that nobody else has done before. He also won the MVP last year for doing the exact same things, and he's not having a better year than he did last year. He's having a good year, but I feel like if you're going to go back-to-back MVP, you better be better this year than you were last year. My vote would be Aaron Judge all the way here. I think that Ohtani is a great player. I think that Ohtani does a lot of things right. I don't think that means that he's automatically or should even be that highly considered for the MVP in this regard. I think that Aaron Judge wins this running away.
Let me just, I agree, of course. Let me just give you a statistic here. 2022, Ohtani has played in the field as a pitcher, which is very impressive. No one else is doing that, but he's played in the field a grand total of 24 games. His other 136 games have come as a DH. So it's not like, and again, he's doing something nobody else has done. I don't want to discount that, but he's not adding any value defensively to his team. He's just a hitter. And last year, this idea that Ohtani plays in the field a lot, last year he played in a grand total of 7 games in the field. And in 2020, he played a total of no games in the field. He was just a DH. So in his whole career as an outfielder, Shohei Ohtani has played 7 games in the field. Again, he's a great pitcher and a great hitter. But when he's not pitching, he's only a DH. And if he was just a DH, would he even be in the consideration for the MVP? No. And so you add in the pitching, which makes it interesting. But when you're comparing, then you also have to give Judge a whole lot of extra credit for playing in the field every day. And he's not just playing right field this year. He's playing center field a whole lot and helping to carry the Yankees. So in my opinion, you can't discount the fact that Aaron Judge plays in the field, which Shohei Ohtani doesn't do except when he pitches.
He plays in the field, Doc. He plays right field. He plays first base.
No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't. He hasn't been. He hasn't been.
Never.
He's
never
gone
played
in
first
there
base in his entire career. I have it right here. He's played 7 games in the outfield, 8.1 innings. That's what he's done.
And just like I said, to caveat that, it just again, I understand everything that you're saying, Doc. If he was an 18-game winner, if he was over and above one of the best pitchers in baseball, I think it would have a lot more weight. That's where it is. Like, hey, he's a good pitcher. He's not the best pitcher in baseball. He doesn't have the best ERA. He's like number 6 in strikeouts. He does win some games, and he is a good pitcher. That being said,
Jack, you're muted.
But guys, you're missing the point. I don't care what he's doing individually. He could be pitching like Justin Verlander and hitting like Big Papi David Ortiz combined. But his most valuable player, the Angels, are 32.5 games out of first place. I don't care how good he is individually. His team is awful. He's not helping his team a great deal through no fault of his. How valuable could you be? You could put one of us in his place, and his team is going to be in the same exact spot.
Well, I don't know about that. because I'm not going to be winning 10 or 11 games pitching, and probably can't catch up to that 60-mile-per-hour curveball. So I wouldn't be good
32
feeling.
and a half games they're out of first place. No one is that valuable to the Angels when you're doing something like. But Aaron Judge, if it wasn't for him, odds are the Yankees wouldn't be in first place. Aaron Judge is more valuable to his team this year than Ohtani is to his. That's what your award should be based on strictly.
I agree, and I don't think we're arguing that. I think that's, like I said, had it be a difference if he was over and above, because the Angels were the same way last year. They weren't any closer to the playoffs.
He shouldn't have gotten it last year. Like A-Rod shouldn't have gotten it when he played for Texas and they won last place.
Well, it's, again, when somebody goes out and has a ridiculously crazy year, and was the best player in all of baseball, like, for instance, in the National League last year, Harper had a better season than everybody else. Phillies didn't make the playoffs.
The Phillies contended. At least they contended for a playoff spot. And you could say if it wasn't for Harper, they wouldn't have contended for a playoff spot. So he showed value that way.
Should a player then be marginalized, in these types of votings for the team putting together a poor product or a manager not managing properly? When a player is doing everything that they can do to try to make their team win, obviously Ohtani doesn't want to lose. He doesn't want to go out there and lose games. They don't want to be 32 games out. But I would blame the team and the way that they perform on managers and the executives of the Angels, not necessarily Ohtani.
Change the name of the award to the Best Player Award. And case closed. Now you have a discussion point. I said, we could go on and on about it, but it's most valuable player as far as how he affects his team.
I think Judge wins that hands down.
Right. Yeah. Based on that, Judge should get it based on how the award is named.
And I think that you could have Ohtani in the conversation, but that's all it is that he's in the conversation and Judge still wins it hands down. Just my opinion. Again, it's just like the harder question is, who is the NL MVP? Is it Goldschmidt now, who's come on really strong lately and is hitting fantastic for the Cardinals? The first baseman of the Mets? Is it somebody on the Dodgers? That's right now. I feel like Aaron Judge, they should just give him the award already. Like, he's already won this award, that even if he was to strike out at every at bat from now to the end of the season, that he'd still win. Just my opinion. The National League is a much harder one to call here.
And the fun thing about Goldschmidt, which you're talking about, is he actually has an outside chance to win the Triple Crown, which would be fun. He's second in the National League in batting, just 4 points behind Freddie Freeman. He is tied for third in home runs with 35, 4 behind Schwarber. Now, 4 is a lot to gain in just a couple of weeks. And he's second in RBIs with 111, just 2 behind Alonso of the Mets. So, if Goldschmidt has a great 2 weeks, the guy could end up actually winning the Triple Crown in the National League. And I think that if that's what happens, and he also does lead the league even without that right now in WAR, barely, 7.7 to Nolan Arenado at 7.6. But then the question becomes, here's where Jack's definition of being most valuable it gets very messy. So take Goldschmidt off the Cardinals, and the number 2 guy in WAR in the National League is his teammate, Arenado. So does that mean neither of them can get it because they're both having great years, and neither one individually is that valuable because they're both having good years? So then you have to give it to somebody else. I don't know. What do you think about that, Jack? Where do you go there?
No, I don't know.
If you have 2 players.
I can understand where they can legitimately split the vote, the 2 of them, but Goldschmidt is having the better year. And I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to give it to Pete Alonso? I mean, Pete Alonso doesn't have an MVP feel about him right now. Freddie Freeman intrigues me, hitting .330, coming over to the Dodgers. He's been an everyday fixture. He's outstanding, but we're so used to him being outstanding that we take him for granted. But what he's meant to the Dodgers, and the Dodgers have been so dominant this year. I wish they would change how the award is given out and wait till the postseason's over. To me, that would be the true MVP. I want to see how the postseason unfolds. Okay, if one player steps up in the postseason and goes gangbusters and is close during the regular season, that should leapfrog him over someone else, in my view. But the postseason doesn't come into play, so I would think it would be Goldschmidt now. I can't see him not getting it at this point.
So here's a question for you guys about awards: is a pitcher, can he win both Cy Young and MVP awards?
Well, it's happened. It happens. I mean, it's before it shouldn't happen, I don't think, because I think the pitchers have their own award, the Cy Young Award. Right. But listen, Roger Clemens, I wouldn't say this in front of him. I heard he got very angry a few weeks ago when they questioned a pitcher's value, because a pitcher could be the most valuable player on his team. So I think the solution is, let me backtrack, allow the pitcher to win the most valuable player award and the Cy Young Award, but create an extra award, most valuable player and best player, position player, and that solves your problem.
So the last one to do that was Justin Verlander. In 2011, he won the Cy Young and the MVP. But it's not happened very often. Vida Blue did it, and it doesn't give me a full list. But
I think Willie Hernandez, or did he not win the Cy Young Award? Sometimes they give. We'd have to look at this. Sometimes the MVP is a pitcher. I'm not sure if that same year. It's also the Cy Young Award. Raleigh Fingers won an MVP. Did he win the Cy Young Award that same year? I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
So interestingly enough, Kershaw won MVP in 2014, but didn't win the Cy Young.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. 1981, I believe, the MVP was Raleigh Fingers. I don't know who the Cy Young Award winner was. I'm going to look it up.
So, but I mean, it does occur where pitchers do win the MVP. And I got to imagine that those are down years in baseball in terms of batting. That somebody may only be batting, barely 300. When I think of 330 is really low. And I know that batting across the board this year in baseball has been down.
He did. Raleigh Fingers. He won the Cy Young and the MVP. Just to close that thought. Sorry.
There you go. So it's, again, there's probably only, you could count on all your fingers all of the pitchers that have won MVP and Cy Young awards. There's probably not many.
Speaking of MVP candidates, I think we're going to be, one of our questions has to do with one of a former MVP candidates, his career, how it's gone.
I almost want to say we might want to hold that one because I think that's a longer discussion, and we're almost a quarter of already. I don't know.
I was going to say that you're talking about that last question on the list, I assume.
Well, there are other questions on there, Pags.
There are other questions, but I was trying to keep it.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah,
I mean, we could save that for next week. We could bring that back. We don't have to talk about
we only
this.
talk about the Yankees, so we figured we'd throw you a bone.
I love the question.
All right,
you want to tease it and say,
let's do it.
Tune in next week.
We could continue it. I mean, we've got enough time.
If it's spirited, we can bring it back.
No one knows what we're talking about. Who's
right? That's why I'm going to ask the question. Considering the great things that were predicted for Bryce Harper at the start of his career, can we say that he has at least fulfilled his potential to this point? Has Harper lived up to the expectations?
All right, so I'm going to say it would be almost impossible to say no. He hasn't even turned 30 yet. He's already won 2 MVP awards. His all-time WAR makes him the number 300 greatest player in baseball history already. He's on par with the Hall of Famer, Tony Oliva. His career has been more valuable than Don Mattingly. He's hitting .305 this year. He's been an all-star 7 times. He's won 2 Silver Slugger awards. And he's got 10 more years on his contract. And if he just plays like he has been, not even that well, and he just becomes a 4-win player every year, he's going to end up with 82.8 WAR, which would make him the 37th most highest WAR of all time. So he's on that same trajectory. And I think sometimes we say, well, he's going to be this, he's going to be that. I think realistically, you can't say that someone's going to be better this many years into their career, as already he's, like I say, better than Tony Oliva, Don Mattingly. I can pull the list up. It's a million. And I've already won 2 MVP awards. I mean, how much more can you expect out of a guy? So, yes, I think Harper's he's had a great career. I think he's doing great things, and he's still on pace to continue a great career, and he's going to finish as one of the top 50 players of all time. What more can you ask for? So that's my answer there.
I mean, I think Doc is pushing the issue, pushing Harper up, elevating him. I mean, it's like pushing a car that broke down, and Doc says, look, we got the car there. Harper's going to go to the Hall of Fame someday. That'll be the prediction. You know, if he just plays so-so for a number of years, I think he gets there. But there's a difference between all-time greats and Hall of Famers. He came up the same time as Mike Trout. And if you ask anyone who's had a greater career, who's been a greater player, Mike Trout or Bryce Harper, virtually everyone is going to say Mike Trout. Trout left him behind. And listen, he has about 284 homers. He's going to finish with somewhere between 500 and 550 home runs. But he's not going to be an all-time great player when you talk about the Willie Mazes, the Mike Trouts, the Ken Griffey Jr.'s. Bryce Harper is not quite going to get there. Listen, the guy was the franchise player of the Washington Nationals. It didn't work out. As soon as he leaves, the Nationals win the World Series. So I don't want to hear how Harper's elevating a team. As it turned out, they were just fine without him being there. You know, and it's hard to put down a guy who's going to be going to the Hall of Fame. And Harper's going to go there someday, but he's not going to go there as a super Hall of Famer. He's not going to be looked at as an all-time great. No one is going to say, well, Bryce Harper is as good as Hank Aaron. They could say that about Mike Trout, perhaps, and have an argument. They could say that perhaps about Ken Griffey Jr., and it could be a great discussion, but no one's quite going to put Bryce Harper there. Yes, he is going to make the Hall of Fame, but he's not going to be a super Hall of Famer. So on that account, considering what was expected of him as being the face of baseball, he hasn't quite, gotten there. His career's been just a tiny bit disappointment, a little bit.
Let me just say something. Ken Griffey Jr.'s lifetime WAR is 83.8. If Bryce Harper just continues at his less than his current pace, and he just has 4 WAR over his next 10 years, he's going to be 82.8. Griffey will be the 36th greatest player. Bryce Harper will be number 37. His career will be right there.
You're going to have to someday, we got to go to a classroom with you, Doc, and you have to teach Pags and myself all about this WAR stuff. Because I could tell you this, and let me throw this to Mac. Mac, if you had a choice to have them over their career, 10 years, let's say, young men at their peak, Bryce
That's
Harper,
a different argument. Wait, that's a different argument at their peak.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. But that's the point, the common sense. We would take Ken Griffey Jr., we would take Mike Trout. I mean, he's having the type of career, he's having a Gary Sheffield type of career, Bryce Harper. How about that? A Gary Sheffield type of career.
I don't agree with that, Jack. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I think you're a little off, on all this.
You
Like
can't compare
when I'm looking at a comparison between the two of these guys, and it goes really in depth on what I have. I have the MLBcomparisons.com, Bryce Harper versus Mike Trout. And they have a similar amount of gains. Mike Trout has a little bit of a lead on that. Similar, close to plate appearances within 200. Same thing with that bats within 200. The batting average is Harper's got 281 career to Mike Trout's 303. Hits is 1364 to 1521. Runs is 906 to 1039. Bryce Harper's number one when I'm doing this. So home runs, Bryce Harper's 283 to Mike Trout's 345. Runs batted in 807 to 885. Doubles, Bryce Harper's got the lead on that, 295 to 288. Triples, Trout's got that, 51 to 23. So they're similar, although Trout's got him by a little bit. And Mike Trout played one more year than Bryce Harper. So he started in 2011. Bryce Harper started in 2012.
Can I tell you an intangible, guys? When Bryce Harper was a free agent, teams were not falling all over one another to sign him. And Doc has mentioned specifically he wishes the Yankees had signed him. If that were Mike Trout, the Yankees would have gone after him, I could say confidently, very hard. They didn't go after Harper at all, it seemed.
I think the Yankees were being looking at their finances that winter. They didn't go after Manny Machado. They didn't go after Patrick Corbin. And I just don't think it's a fair argument to say, you know what, you're not as good as Mike Trout, so your career is a disappointment, because it's possible that Mike Trout's going to go down as one of the top 10 baseball players of all time. So that's like saying Hank Greenberg's not good because he's not quite Lou Gehrig. I mean, you can be great, but you can't. Only 10 guys are going to be Mike Trout over the course of their career in the history of baseball. So, like, Mike Trout is on that pier with Mantle and Garrett, Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth and Barry Bonds.
Well, let me throw this at all you guys.
Griffey's not Barry Bonds. I mean, you want to take the steroids out.
I'm going to throw this at you guys and give you an example. If Bryce Harper all of a sudden fell flat, he forgot to hit, and he became Aaron Hicks or Joey Gallo, he flamed out the next couple, and then it would be out of baseball in 2-3 years and did nothing the next 2-3 years at all. Would he make it into the Hall of Fame?
No.
Maybe, but he has a shot. Maybe not. But if Clayton Kershaw, when he hadn't won a lot of games, when he was well under 200, was a sure Hall of Famer.
So, but you could say the same thing about Mike Trout. Say Mike Trout decided that
he's in. Trout's in now.
Trout's in by now.
Yeah.
But
so
you want to talk about
if Trout goes the next 4 years and bats the same way that Gallo does,
doesn't
he's
matter.
He's automatically.
He's in. He's in.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
No, Trout's already, like I say, even right now, he's 37th greatest player of all time.
I thought that was Harper.
No, Harper would be there in 10 years. So, but you want to talk about, like you were saying, well, who'd you rather have, Ken Griffey or Bryce Harper? Ken Griffey, over the last 9 years of his career, those years he played with Cincinnati before he went back and played a little bit with the White Sox, he wasn't good. He had 270. He had 210 home runs.
Catches in the field. He was spectacular in the outfield.
Not when he was on Cincinnati.
Well, he started flaming out at Cincinnati. Yeah.
But that's 9 years he wasn't great. He was great in Seattle. He wasn't great in Cincinnati. But he's still an all-time great. He's still a super player. But to say that, well, he didn't fulfill his promise because he didn't do as well as Hank Aaron. I mean, I just think that's setting the bar far too high.
No, to me, he's a Hall of Famer, Bryce Harper. He's going to be there. Okay, he has to do it. He has a little work cut out from which he's going to do. Okay, he just has to be good, not great the rest of his career, and he's a surefire Hall of Famer. But I'm looking at it in terms that he was expected in some quarters, like from yours truly, to be an all-time great, like a super Hall of Famer. Instead, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. His career has absolutely been successful, absolutely. But it's like saying basketball. Clyde Drexler is a Hall of Famer, but if you thought he was going to be Michael Jordan, you're just a little disappointed he never turned out to be Michael Jordan. But he was great. He was a Hall of Famer, so he was successful. That's why I look at it as Bryce Harper.
Do you think that he's on you? So you're kind of thinking that he's on the edge. I mean, you're saying that he probably gets voted in as a Hall of Famer, but that he's on the edge. Who else would you say is on the edge of a Hall of Fame?
Joey Votto. I don't know what you guys think of him. That's a very intriguing name. His whole career with Cincinnati. Good numbers. It seems like he needs a little more work. But if you consider he had no protection in that lineup at Cincinnati, he was the franchise player for so long.
Well, could you say Bernie Williams, Greg Nettles, all these are potentials?
Bernie's a little short. Greg Nettles is intriguing if you consider he was one of the great defensive third basemen of all time. But no one appreciated that at the time. They just look at cold numbers, you know?
I agree with
that. That might be a good question to investigate for next week.
Hey, Greg Nettles doesn't even have a plaque in Monument Park, let alone Cooperstown.
Hey, and there's a great chapter in this book about that.
Yes.
Yes. Great. Hey, sometimes you set them up just to knock them down.
Yes.
That's right.
That was. We were going to talk about tennis. That was like a lob. I just smashed that one, right?
Yeah. I mean, another question. I went to a Philly game before the pandemic, and I didn't know it was like not exactly an old timers game, but to honor the Philly players of the past. And I'm in the stands in Philadelphia, and you're hearing these names. And no offense, they were good names, but they're not the Yankees, not those big names from the past.
One more thing we forgot. Campanella, right? The celebration of Campanella, all the players on the team, all Hispanic, won the game. So an unbelievable player to grace baseball, Campanella, and it's a shame we forgot him. So there you go.
Well, he's in the Hall of Fame, I'm sure. He has got to be Roy Campanella.
No, I think you're talking about Roberto Clemente.
Yes. Oh, yeah, Roberto Clemente.
No, everyone reveres Roberto Clemente.
No, they just had Roberto Clemente Day in Major League Baseball. It's a player wearing a 21 patch, and we didn't talk today about what a great player Roberto Clemente was.
I want to give you just some very quick trivia. The 1969 Miracle Mets season, I think it was September 24th was the day, 1969. I was actually at the game. And Bob Moose, the Pirate pitcher, no-hit the Mets. They were no-hitted in their Miracle Mets season. Roberto Clemente saved the no-hitter with a sensational catch.
There you go.
There you go. So, and that's a great way to end this show as we have gone through our 2 hours. It's always a little fun when talking about that. It's not just baseball. We're expanding your horizons there, Doc. We're getting you into.
Look, I have all this tennis stuff here, all these tennis stats.
Well, don't worry, tennis ain't going nowhere. We'll be bringing it back next week.
You have holdover questions, Pax, that you could file away when we.
There's like two tennis questions that came up. So, like I said, my tennis is a little rusty there, so I don't.
Mine is too, but I had to figure it all out. Greatest tennis player ever, Yvonne Lendl. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I was going to say I was a Jimmy Connors fan. So. It was back in the day when I was playing badminton, I would act like I was Jimmy Connors.
They wouldn't allow you in the tennis stadiums dressed up passing players. They don't allow it, that sport.
No, they do not. However, I'm a Philly guy, and there's not many Philly tennis players. So
That's true.
But everybody, thank you very much for hanging with us today. Have a great rest of your weekend. Tomorrow we do the Mac and Jack and Jim football Sunday special. So check it tomorrow, and we will see you then. Take care, guys.